Can you read out the authors, please, because the names are jumbled up a bit?
Hello, I'm Paulo Sondomu. I'm a PhD student at Norwegian University of Science and Technology. I wrote this paper together with Ola Joni Klageg from the same university, Ola Ladre, and Professor Glenn Ballard from NTNU, and he works also at University of California, Berkeley. And the title of the paper is A Comparison of Competitive Dialogue and Best Value Procurement. So I will build on the presentation Mikkel did and compare best value procurement with competitive dialogue procedure, because we are using these two procedures right now in Norway to involve contractors in early phases of a project, infrastructure projects. So it's important to see which one is better for what kind of project situation and which one is not suitable for project situations that are. And at the same time, it's also important to compare them in terms of lean. So that's what I will present here today. This way. Yeah, it's not making. So the outline of my presentation will be, first I will introduce you about early contractor involvement and lean, then research questions, and followed by the method that I have used to compare these two methods, and brief presentation of the two methods, competitive dialogue and best value procurement approaches. Then I will present my findings, that is comparison of the two approaches, and conclusion, that will be the answer for the three research questions that I have. Okay. As all of you know, construction knowledge and experience is important in the early phase of a project, and there are different ways of doing that. One of the ways to involve construction knowledge and experience in the early phase is to involve the contractors directly in the early phase of the project, to engage them and to work with them. There are different approaches that can be used to involve contractors in the early phase of a project. Depends on when they are involved and how they are involved and why they are involved. The two common approaches that we are practicing here, in Norway currently are competitive dialogue and best value procurement. And when I talk about early contractor involvement, it's also part of lean. That's why I want to explain here. Lean, according to Lean Construction Institution Triangle, it has 3 sides, and early contractor involvement is part of the integrated organization side of Lean Construction Triangle. So when I talk about early contractor involvement, I'm talking one part of the lean zone. And I developed 3 research questions to compare these two approaches. The first one was, what is the similarity and difference of these two approaches? And the second one, which approach is suited for what kind of project situation? And the third one is, which approach is suitable to implement lean, and in what way? The method I have used is first literature study, and I studied 2 cases, 2 infrastructure projects that are going on right now in Norway. And there are 2 companies that are, or 2 owners that are using these 2 approaches, 2 public owners. And one is using best value procurement in infrastructure projects, and the other one is competitive dialogue in infrastructure projects. I used interview and document study, 6 interviews from each case, and also studied documents like protocols from tender opening protocols and such kind of documents. I will just briefly explain the phases of competitive dialogue before I go to the comparison and best value procurement. First, competitive dialogue procedure. Basically, it has five phases. Start with preparation phase, that the client prepare himself for the dialogue in preparing dialogue framework and determining the weighting criteria to select or selection criteria, followed by pre-qualification phase. Then and followed by dialogue phase. In the dialogue phase, the client and the contractor sit and develop the project together. And at least 3 suppliers should be involved to make the competition fair or to have enough competition. Then, based on the project developed by the contractors, the evaluation and selection phase will be followed based on most economical advantageous tender. Then goes to the winner contractor goes to execution phase. That is brief explanation of this competitive dialogue procurement procedure. When I talk about best value procurement, it has 4 phases. Start with phase 0 because it's optional phase and it's pre-qualification phase, and followed by selection phase, that is phase 1, and only one contractor or one supplier goes to phase 2, clarification phase. And in this phase, contractor clarify what his plan is and give detail of the project or his plan for the project. And if the client is satisfied with the clarification phase, then the winner contractor goes to the execution phase. Then this is my finding. I have developed several comparison factors based on literature study, interview, and document study, and I compared these 2 methods here. When we come to the first comparison factor, when was the selection phase happened in competitive dialogue, it's the selection phase is happening late after the dialogue phase. But in best value procurement, the selection phase is coming earlier, then followed by clarification phase. So there is big difference between these 2 approaches in terms of when it's happening the selection phase. And in terms of pre-qualification, it's mandatory to have pre-qualification phase in competitive dialogue procedure, but it's optional in best value procurement. And in terms of how the client and the contractor interact, they interact differently. Even if they have a meeting and sit together, in competitive dialogue, it's a dialogue, it's both-way communication, they develop the project together. But in best value procurement, it's like clarification. It's the vendor or the contractor who explains what his plan is. So the client role is more or less to evaluate if it's fulfilled his requirements. And regarding how many suppliers that develop or how many contractor develops the project, in competitive dialogue, at least 3 suppliers should develop the project because the selection phase is coming after the dialogue phase or after the project is developed. But in best value procurement, only one supplier develops the project because the selection phase is happening earlier. And also, client's control on the detail. The client have much better control on the detail of the project before the contract signing in competitive dialogue, but much less control in best value procurement. And the client can filter the solution of the contractors in the selection phase, or he can select which solution is suits for his project in competitive dialogue. But in the best value procurement, the contractor or just explain what his plan is, nothing more than that. And regarding the resource demand for the client, they have also difference. Competitive dialogue is demanding because the client should have a dialogue with at least 3 suppliers. And it should be confidential dialogue with 3 suppliers. He can't share information with, between suppliers. So it's demanding for the client to have competitive dialogue on several projects. But when we see best value procurement, it's less demanding because it's only with 1 supplier is going with this clarification phase. Also, the suppliers need for the and also regarding the suppliers, they have also different use when it comes to resource. It's demanding for all three suppliers to sit and discuss and develop the projects, but it's only for one in best value procurement. And more or less, competitive dialogue is it's not a standardized procedure and give more weight for price than qualification when it comes to weighting of price and qualification. But in best value procurement, more weightage is given for qualification. Mostly 75% weightage is given for qualification and 25% for the selection for the price. And when we see when they are originated from, competitive dialogue is a procedure that is described by European public procurement regulation, and it's originated from European Union, but best value procurement developed or originated from USA. But now we are adapting it in Europe. When we come to the conclusion, I just want to remind you the first research question. What are the similarity and difference between the best value procurement and competitive dialogue? That was the first research question. When I talk about the similarity, the first one is both can be used to involve contractors in the early phase of projects. That is one of the similarities between these two approaches. And both can be used under the EU legislation. And both work best with design build contract than design bid build contract, because when we use design build contract, the contractors get more freedom. That is the whole idea behind involving them earlier. And they allow interaction between the client and the contractors during the procurement phase, which is also a positive thing. And they have several differences. Just to describe some of them, in competitive dialogue, several suppliers develop solution for a project, but only one supplier develops a solution in best value procurement. And best value procurement is more or less standardized and effective method compared to competitive dialogue during the procurement phase. And the second research question was, which approach suits for what kind of project situation? And the answer is, best value procurement suits when a client looks for a supplier that has done several things, several relevant things several times with high performance. Whereas competitive dialogue suits when a client is willing to invest more in the procurement phase to increase the product value, the end value of a product, by competing several suppliers based on their solution to the project. And the last research question was, which approach is better to implement lean in public sector? And thus the answer is, both can be used to implement lean in public sector, but in different way. Best value procurement reduces waste because it's effective and standardized procedure, but competitive dialogue increase value because you can compare several solutions and select the best solution for your project, specific project. That was my last point. We will take the question later on.